deep in the bottom of the Pacific Ocean, below the island Bikini Atoll. Written on paper and kept in a glass bottle, one secret recipe lies locked in a safe in the back room of an old lobster trap turned restaurant and guarded by one yellow fry cook, waiting for brave adventurers to have a peek at it. Okay, by now you've probably figured out that's the story behind the Krabby Patty secret formula, but it very well could be real because the KFC Secret Recipe is such a closely guarded trade secret that no one really knows what's in it. All we know is that it's the combination of 11 herbs and spices used to flavor the very fried chicken that skyrocketed KFC to fame. But when all is fried and done, do we have a foodspiracy hiding in the bones of the chicken? What's really in the sauce? And what are the mysterious herbs and spices that make KFC's chicken so finger-lickin' good? Okay, so let's start at the beginning. One that isn't some pineapple under the sea or some galaxy far off where aliens are duking it out. Our story begins in a gas station in Corbin, Kentucky with good old Harlan Sanders. Way back in the 1930s, he used to cook for hungry travelers passing through the area, and it was then that he perfected his recipe for fried chicken using a pressure cooker, which allowed the chicken to be cooked faster and more evenly. Over the years, Sanders grew popular for his delicious fried chicken, but he had to close his first restaurant and he faced numerous rejections to open new ones. But like a hard-headed alien looking for the next planet to conquer, he didn't give up. Instead, he traveled across the United States, spreading the chicken flavor news while he refined the recipe. Legend has it that he carried his secret blend of 11 herbs and spices in his car trunk, ready to season chicken at any given moment like a chicken spicing Santa coming to bless us all. If that doesn't sound like something a fairy would do, we don't know what does. So things start looking up for the Colonel when restaurant owners start showing interest in his recipe, and finally in 1955, he struck a deal with Pete Harmon, the owner of a restaurant in Salt Lake City, Utah, who agreed to sell Sanders' chicken. That was probably the best decision he ever made because jumping aliens on a saucer, sales increased by 75%, and Pete was raking in the money. Perhaps all that cash was what inspired him to create the original chicken bucket, and thus KFC was born. But even with the restaurant up and running and, most importantly, expanding, Colonel Sanders kept the recipe hidden somewhere in his beard. Alien overlords don't give up their location, and Sanders wasn't giving up his recipe. He was so determined to keep the recipe secret that he used to mix a portion of the herbs and spices himself, while other parts were made by different suppliers. That way, no single supplier could know the complete recipe. To this day, KFC's chicken recipe remains as much a secret as the place the aliens zapped our dinosaurs to, and only a select few people have ever known the exact combination of 11 herbs and spices that has our tummies growling louder than hungry hounds in a bucket of KFC. But you know what they say about secrets. Where there's a secret, there's foodspiracy, and when there's a foodspiracy, we're gonna crack it. So let's put our aliens conspiracy cream right here. Okay, over the years, many have tried and failed, according to KFC, to get the exact combo of herbs and spices that the Colonel used, but who really got it right? Are we to believe them? For starters, the taste of KFC chicken has changed drastically from what it once was. Even during the Colonel's lifetime, the taste of it changed so much that he hated it. So, when trying to get a near-perfect recipe, what are we looking at? The Colonel's own or that of those who try to recreate the taste of their childhoods? The first recipe we're taking a lick at involves 99X? Oh, wait, is that the name of some alien overlord or a space cadet from another galaxy? Nope, it's the name of a spice, Colonel Sanders approved spice. The story goes that when the Colonel sold KFC and it became a massive franchise, he absolutely hated how they cooked his chicken. In fact, he got so mad about it that he went to Marion K Spices in Brownstown, Indiana, US and went, "Yo, dudes, can y'all make this spice that's a blend of my 11 herbs and spices?" And they were like, "I bet." When the deed was done, he recommended the seasoning to franchisees over whatever watered-down schlop corporate was shilling. Right after he died, KFC sued Marion K and literally forbade them from selling the mixture to KFC franchises. Talk about sour. Luckily, the seasoning is still sold under the name 99X. Some even say it's indistinguishable from the original KFC recipe. We're here to see if some are telling the truth. The catch in using 99X is that we don't actually know what's in it. To get that sweet FDA approval, they added the ingredients to the back, but it doesn't give us the full list of Colonel Sanders' 11 H&S. The ingredients are basically pepper, salt, and other natural spices. Yes, that sounds like a conspiracy waiting to happen. Other natural spices? What are we eating here, Marion K? On to the chicken feasting, and we can safely tell you that using 99X is the closest you can get to authentic KFC chicken. Following the recipe on Marion K's website, you'll find that the chicken is very much like KFC's. It's not too salty or too peppery, definitely not as tongue-scorching as Blue Takis. And if we were to blindfold you, stuff a few pieces of it in your mouth, and demand you tell us where it came from, you'll probably say KFC. That's how close it is. If we've already found a close match, why keep going? Well, if 99X is the closest we can get to that finger-licking goodness, then the secret recipe is still a secret. Other natural flavors don't count, so we're left grasping at straws, trying to figure out what's in the chicken. So who has the actual recipe? Will we ever figure it out? Or will we wallow in this foodspiracy, comforting ourselves with the closest we could get? 99X. Let's find out. Up next on the seasoning board is renowned American author and chef Todd Wilbur. He's famous for his TV show and cookbook, Top Secret Recipes, where, as the name probably clued you in, he reveals how to recreate popular dishes from popular restaurant chains like McDonald's, KFC, and Olive Garden. Wilbur dug deep into the chicken by not only reverse engineering the recipe through trial and error, but also visiting KFC's pressure fryer supplier and talking to a friend and business associate of Colonel Sanders himself. What he came back with was a recipe consisting of 11 herbs and spices and flour, because you can't make KFC chicken without that. Well, let's take a look here at it. So, Todd Wilbur's recipe contains granulated sugar, ground white pepper, paprika, ground savory, ground sage, ground ginger, ground marjoram. Wow, we sure are doing a lot of grinding for this one. Onion powder, garlic powder, ground cayenne, all-purpose flour, and salt. Based on his research, that's the secret the Colonel took to his grave, and all you gotta do to get that chicken in your mitts is to combine all the seasoning in a small bowl, cover the chicken well with it, and let it sit for at least an hour before throwing it in a deep fryer or a pressure cooker if you have one of those. The result, if you actually cook it well, is a delicious fried chicken that doesn't quite taste like KFC's own, even though it is finger-licking good. X on the buzzer for this one. Sorry, Mr. Wilbur. Better luck next time. So we're still on a hunt for the Chicken King, and our next competitor to step into the ring is a lab result? We're not even making this up. Someone actually got KFC chicken tested just to figure out what's in it. Author, columnist, and skeptic William Poundstone is the dude who did that. So what other worldly delicacies does Mr. Poundstone have for us? Glad you asked. First off, Colonel Sanders has some questions to answer because based on the lab results, KFC's chicken didn't contain 11 herbs and spices like it's supposed to. It contained just 4 ingredients: flour, salt, black pepper, and MSG, along with the chicken, of course. Seems weird, but what works, works. But does it work? Well, this one was a bit of a tricky test because although the lab managed to identify the ingredients used in the Colonel's chicken, they didn't specify the proportions. For all we knew, he could have added a whole lot of pepper with just an itty-bitty pinch of salt. To be fair, this lab test was done over 40 years ago, and we're judging it by modern KFC standards, but still. If you work off of pure common sense and a reasonable amount of each ingredient, you're left with chicken. Seriously, guys, there's really no other way to describe it. It doesn't taste bad, but it definitely tastes even less KFC than the first recipe, and that's what we're gunning for. This recipe fails harder than a rocket crash landing. So, is that all there is to it? Will we ever find the KFC we crave? Well, worry not, gremlins, because we've got the solution, and it all comes from a romance movie? You heard that right, folks. Back in 2020, KFC thought their chicken was so good you'd have to have fallen in love with it and the Colonel. so they released A Recipe for Seduction, Alien's favorite telenovela. We can't tell you much about the movie because we don't want to spoil it, but in it, every time the Colonel's pulling a SpongeBob and whipping up something tasty, there's always citrus near him. Maybe the real KFC chicken was the oranges we found along the way. Did the Colonel probably put citrus in his Southern fried chicken? No, but we want this to taste like whatever corporate concoction they're selling now, so it's worth a shot. For a fact, we know that KFC adds citric acid to the soybean oil they use to fry the chicken to make it last longer. So let's give it a go and figure out if this is the secret they've been hiding all along, using the closest thing we could get to KFC, the Alien 99X recipe, and a dash of citric acid in the oil. Weirdly enough, even though it was just a bit, the citric acid really bumps the 99X recipe closer to KFC than it was before it. Has this been the secret all along? Did we crawl through Bikini Bottom, toil away behind the deep fryer, and eat loads of fried chicken just to have citrus and other natural spices be the thing that ties it all together? Seems so, folks. The mystery behind the finger-licking chicken and good old Sanders came back swinging. He took his recipe to the grave, and those who do know it aren't going to share it with anyone anytime soon. So this Foodspiracy has been unraveled with sweat, chicken, and oranges.